I'm the same. Like I'm fascinated by the mind. Like and this whole last year and a half has been such an eye opener for me. Like and I've been also doing reading on loads of different things, and like, when you peel it back, like the average person, we know nothing.
Right.
we know absolutely nothing. So if we start to, and the stuff you can learn that you can take from other people's lived experiences like yourself, or
Yep.
other people's writings or audiobooks, and when you start to understand certain things, and then you start to see them in everyday life, you go, oh yeah, well yeah, that's because of that, and you
Yep.
can start to piece together things that sometimes would have probably knocked you for six. Well, and yeah, I just think if the more we learn, the better we can.
It's the shared experiences, isn't it? It's the good and bad. It's the shared experience of both that something somewhere along the line will resonate with somebody, and you don't know who, how old they are, what they've been through, where they live.
Right.
But you could say one sentence, and their mind could just completely change. They'll be like, "Oh shit, hang on, let me try this," and then all of a sudden they're on a different journey, and it's that mentorship without knowing.
Yeah, it truly is, man.
It's all the reading that you're doing, and you're taking it in. You can quote something of that, and it captures somebody's attention, and they go, "I'm going to look at that." They then go and look at it. They become a fan. They get a bit knowledgeable. They pass it on. It's just, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me, Ira, is that the way you've opened up about everything is just incredible. So thank you so much for that. But the way you and your family have, what's the right word? Not dealt with it, just got on with it. You've just gone, right, this is really shit, but guess what? We're going to do the best we can, as hard as we can. And then, that's all gone. You're now focusing on the next part and helping other people like Marco. To echo what Marco said, it's incredible that you can have the courage, to share your story with other people, to guide them through. Know that it's okay to grieve. Like a lot of, especially guys, a lot of guys tend to go, "Nah, I can't cry. I can't let it out. I can't do it," because of how society sees us and the sort of persona of man. Whereas actually that's so far from the truth. We need to do it more. I think we are, there's sort of less stigma about it all now. But the more you can show that you can wear your heart on your sleeve, and it's okay. Doesn't make you a weak person at all. If anything, it makes you a strong person to be able to go, "Hey, I have feelings. This is how it's affected me. And now look at me." You haven't just gone into a corner, into a box, and gone, "No, I don't want anything to do with anybody." But you've smashed it.
As well, like feelings are like, I always describe it like, it's like taste. Like, you imagine if you only tasted one thing, when you taste all different types of food, you have your mouth tells you what different types of emotion. That for me, that's like feelings and emotions. You have to experience all these emotions. You can't just be stone faced. Nothing affects you. I'll tell you, do you remember? You probably don't, Ira. I don't know if you watch soccer or football.
Sure.
But the European Championships recently, we had Christian Eriksen. No, Christian Eriksen collapsed on the pitch. He had a heart attack on the pitch.
Oh,
like I was crying my eyes out watching it. Like, I have no affiliation to him whatsoever, but like just the emotion just took over me, and like, it's just. I feel like
with emotion, I think I'm a big believer is that you cannot have the ultimate high of emotion without having the ultimate low, because you don't know that that's your high. You don't know that's your peak. Like, that's the best feeling you'll ever feel in your life. Why should it be?
Right.
Who's telling you, look how happy you are now? Guess what? You can't get any happier.
Well, I think there's some of that too, though. Like talking about like where, again, why sharing my story is the idea of like how deep our shit sucked and how bad our life was. And even I know that wasn't as bad as perhaps ton of other people in this world, right? It's just I happen to live through that and experience that, right? And again, reading Viktor Frankl or reading any of those other guys, we see that it could have been 10 times worse, right? Or 1,000. I can't quantify that really. Yeah. But that somebody else has lived through that, right? And I think that's the key, like lived through. is the big part of it, is that we've gotten through those pieces, and that we continue to live on the other side of it, and giving them the hopes of that, right? And then, like you were talking about, like the whole tasting, right? So like Jason Silva, he also likes to talk about hedonic adaptation, right? So the idea of like constantly changing the things that you have so that you can experience the best things. Like if you eat chocolate and it's your favorite thing in the world, and you eat that chocolate for the first time, it's the best experience you've ever had. Guess what? The next time you eat it, you know what to expect. So it's not going to be that best experience, right? So that's why you keep going different places in the world, so that when you're traveling, you get that feeling, you get that shift and that change in mind state. Yeah. And I think that feelings are those too. I've never been that stoic guy, man, to be honest. Like, you know, I'd be on business trips sitting down with clients, and they're like, how you doing, man? Like, not knowing my shit, right? And they're like, how you doing, man? How's your day? And I'm like, fucking shit, man. And I'd lose my stuff, you know? And I'd be at dinner, and this guy asked me a question, and I hadn't seen him a long time. And I make friends really well when I'm on the road. I'm always great at, I'm a sales guy, so I'm a relationship guy. I build these relationships deep. And I have friends all over the country. And I go out to dinner with this guy, and, hey, man, how's life going? How are the kids? And then you have to choose. Do I tell them that my daughter's fighting, or do I pretend to be normal tonight and have a dinner where we just laugh and drink beer and have a great time, and we don't pretend about my shit?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I generally couldn't keep it back a lot of times. Sometimes I would hide it, and we'd have a great night, and I would just pretend life was normal. But you'd have those moments where fucking tears would just come, and you're like, and they're like, what's your problem, dude? Like, I think I wrote in the blog in the very early part, I ran into one of my old contacts at the airport. He's like, how have you been? And I emotionally vomited on the dude. And I was just like, wow, this dude's like going somewhere, and he just had the pit to spare smack him in the face and be like, what the, when he walked away. And I texted him like 10 minutes later. I'm like, dude, I just kind of realized what I just said. I'm sorry about that. We can talk later. And he's like, oh, no worries. You know, he's a good dude for it. But it's, you gotta get it out.
I had that. So the week after my mum passed, I was at a gala dinner, like a black tie event. And then the after dinner speaker was talking about like losing a family member. Oh my god! I was sat at this table. I was just sat at this table, like everyone, and it wasn't a sad story. It was like quite.
It's just a trigger. It's a trigger, man.
And so everyone sat there, and I was just in tears, and like people like, what's this? What's this guy doing? Like sort of him, and I had to say, look, I'm sorry, like I've just lost my mum, like, but I just come over me. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, so we lost Audrey in 17, and then 1 year later in 18, my dad got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And then I lost him 6 months later. And it was, and going back into the hospital, man, oof. Like the PTSD to going back in and seeing my dad hooked up to machines and the beeping, and I mean they were the same machines and the same beeps and triggers, man, huge triggers. I can't watch kids in the hospital on TV. I mean I can, but I can't see through the tears, right? Like those moments that you find your ways around. But you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So I'm one strong, hard dude, man.
Yeah.
Ira, how did you and your wife's relationship? Because I read an interesting. We interviewed a guy who got married to the same woman twice recently, and so I was doing a bit of reading. I was doing a bit of reading on marriage, and one of the statistics that I read was, I think it was something like 60% of marriages end due to like an illness in the family. Like how did you guys cope through that?
Yeah, so we got married early. We've been married for 22 years. It'll be 23 years in September, and we've been together for 26 years in September, I want to say. So I mean, we've been together since we were kids, man. And you know, it hasn't always been perfect, right? Like there's lots of ups and downs, but when the cancer hit, man, we became an inseparable team. And we fought together side by side. We carried all the torches. She was, you know, the biggest warrior my wife could ever be. You know, she just stepped up and she did all the things that needed to do while I was traveling. You know, I traveled for work for sales, and I was in Hawaii for a week selling stuff while my wife was inpatient with my daughter getting chemo. You know, and my wife was awesome with me along the way. She wasn't mad at me. Obviously, she wished she could be in Hawaii. I did take her to Hawaii after everything, you know, try to make up for some of that. But yeah, I mean, so the actual statistic is 99% of couples that have their kid diagnosed with cancer get divorced.
99. Wow.
99% of families that lose their kid for any reason get divorced. I think that makes sense.
Why do you think that is? Yeah,
Oh,
why
yeah,
do you
yeah.
think that is?
So, and it's a struggle I fight still every day, to be honest, man. And it's a fight or flight first off, right? So some dudes are just weak and they run from the fight and they can't fight it. And I say that straight up weak. If you walk away from the situation where I've seen,
Yeah.
then you have no business being a dad anyway.
Mhm.
And that's probably the harshest statement I could ever say, but
No.
I don't see it any other way. And I might be wrong on that, and I'm okay with that, but that's just how I see the world. And so I think that's part of it. Some dudes just run. They run from the family, they run from that, and they get divorced, right? The other is they can't deal with how their other spouse is handling the situation in the moment, and they can't have that empathy and allow the space for them to feel how they need to feel. They feel that they need to feel how they need to feel in that moment, right? And my wife and I went through all these different emotions along the way, and guys and ladies are different in how we deal with stuff, and it's physically true. And then there's exceptions to every rule, right? But if you're just to look at the whole and the percentages, there's differences between us. That's why we're dads and there's moms, and there's you know men are from Mars and women from Venus,
Yeah.
whatever that is,
Yeah.
right? Like that feeling, and then how we deal with that. So you have to give them the emotional space to deal with it. And
Mm.
we were a unit when it came to all of that stuff. We never went against each other. We talked through all the things we needed to talk to. We communicated deeply when we needed to communicate deeply. And at the same time, like, we didn't see each other for a lot of times. I'd go to the hospital and stay with Audrey. She'd go home because she'd been there for a day, and there'd be weeks we wouldn't see each other.
Yeah.
I don't think we slept in the same house for probably, it could go months. Because one was at the hospital, one was here. I'd be
Sure.
traveling.
Sure.
When we weren't at the hospital, I was on the road, and I was trying to make that happen, right? And so, and we got through that. And then, like I said, that was the easy part.
Yeah.
Uh, the backside of all of that, and that's the hard part. Dealing with loss, grief, that's hard, man. And
Do
it's
you?
giving her the space.
Yeah. Just on that grief, because this is
Mhm.
I experienced this. Like, I didn't grieve properly for about 2. It was about 2 years after.
Because you
Like,
pushed it off.
yeah, well, of course, yeah, I did. And it wasn't until I think it was Mother's Day, like 2 years after, and I was like, whew, like it really just hit me, and I was like, Jesus, like that's when I really struggled with it, but then right, and now I have to deal with this. But yeah, you're right. I did. I put it off because I was the oldest child in the family. Dad was never around, so it was just mum, me, and then my younger brothers and sisters. So I was always I hate the term man of the house because I never was that.
Yeah,
But
yeah. You were that
I was.
figure, though, man.
Yeah, so they would always come to me. Like, they're
Mhm.
my youngest is 10 years younger than me, and my oldest is 5 years younger than me. So, you know, I'm much older than them, and they would always look to me for strength, and trying to deal with that and try and be that tower of strength is hard when you're trying to
Yeah,
cope with it yourself, of course.
I think it's just identifying those pieces, right? Like, I read somewhere that everything that we suppress in our brain is now just suppressed into our subconscious. It's just not available in our conscious, right? And it's
Yeah.
constantly going to keep coming back, and we can keep putting it back in our subconscious all we want, but
Mhm.
until we deal with it and pack it away in a productive way, we're going to struggle with that, right? And so I think just eventually you had that moment where you had to go head on with it, and you say, here it is. It's the raw. I got to deal with it. I got to grieve for it. I got to go through all of those stages. And if anyone
Yeah.
ever thinks that they can avoid those stages, at some level, grief is going to get you. And I mean, for me, I carried my daughter's lifeless body out to the car, right? And she left. I had to deal with it then. And we all have different ways and times that we're going to get through those pieces. But getting through that and dealing with it and facing it head on for a while, because I think that it's like if you lose an arm, you can't do anything until the damn thing heals, and then you can actually start to live again, right? And so I think I lost a lot more than an arm in those moments, right? So it's healing it's a healing enough that you can start physical therapy in a way, really, when you're really dealing with something that deep, and then just starting to dig out those pieces, right? Thinking fast and thinking slow, I think is the title of that one. It really talks about system 1 and system 2 in our brains and how we like subconsciously and consciously process data, right? And then the logic bits of how our lizard brain versus our evolved brain actually process through those pieces. And then as I began to understand those things, like from that book, my biggest takeaway was, they did an experiment, and we're humans, man. We're so the same. We all think we're different and unique, but we're not. We're all so similarly wired, man. We can't get around this stuff. It's just inherently built into us. We have genetic memory. There's a reason why we fear stuff we've never seen. There's a reason why my chickens that I have fear a hawk in the sky, but they have no idea what a hawk's going to do to them because they've lived in the same their entire life, right? It's genetic DNA. And so, like, through that genetic memory, we understand these things. And one example that helped me with something was they were talking about this study that he did. He did all these types of studies. And one was around, they had 6 people all in individual booths, and they had to talk about themselves or whatever. And one of them, he called this dude, I don't know, it was the plant basically, but that was the word he used from a really old book. And he talked about how this guy faked having a seizure, and then how many people came to his rescue, right? And on average, it was only 1 or 2 or none. And it was because they assumed either they didn't have the skills to deal with it, or it was already taken care of and they wanted to stay out of the way. Mm-hmm. Well, in our fight, and this is one thing that if anyone can take away from this video, in our fight, people just assumed we were good. They assumed we had too much on the plate to offer to do stuff. They just walked out of our lives. And we were alone a lot of times to deal with this stuff. And there were some people that definitely, and they know who they are, but there was a lot of people that just, I don't know what to say, so I'm just going to avoid this situation and man, dig into that. Like, if you have a friend going through something, ask how they are. And when they say fine, say you're a liar, and dig in deeper and say, where can I help? And if they don't answer where they can help, go do it. They're not going to be mad at you. And if they are mad at you, that's okay. That's just because they have the situation. They need you, and they need your input, and they need you involved in their lives. Don't walk away.
It's that thing we've
heard.
I heard a stat thing. It was like, so touching on what I just joined back on, I just had to go and check on my boy. He's got this habit at the moment, no matter how hot it is, he likes to sleep under his duvet.
Oh, he's a sweaty boy right now.
Oh my God. I've just gone and had to change his bed around him asleep.
That's awesome.
He might as well swim. I might put him in swimming shorts tomorrow.
I love how they don't wake up at that age too. Like, you could do anything. You could hold him by an ankle up and he'd still be asleep and put him back down.
But then at 4:30 in, he's wired. He's awake.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So just jumping back a few steps is that, there's this stat I heard that for things like PTSD, if you don't deal with it, like you were talking about, if you don't actually accept it and start talking about it and deal with it, PTSD can take sometimes up to, I think it's 12 years to manifest and actually trigger. So within 12 years, something can trigger that PTSD. And you could say, that old saying that we like to say, are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. I'm fine. Well, actually, you keep saying that for long enough, you'll start to believe it. But then there's that trigger that happens. Then everyone around you is going, well, I thought you was okay. I thought you were
Marco experience.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole thing. And so I was in the military, and I've got a lot of friends that are still in, just coming out. And, they're exactly that stereotypical person to say, yeah, I'm good. And then you go, well, actually, I know where you've been and what you've done. Like, I've experienced it, and like I'm not the strongest of persons, and it messed me up a little bit. So I know what you're going through. So don't tell me you're okay. And it's having that ability about yourself to challenge people, not in a horrible way. Don't be a dick about it and say, no, you're not okay. Trust me, I know more than you. It's not like that. But challenging people, when you hear so often, I'm okay and I'm fine, 9 times out of 10, they're probably not. They're probably going through something, but they don't want to either share the burden. They probably think that you don't actually care, or you haven't got an interest in it. It becomes a formality, doesn't it?
Like, well, they assume you can't. They assume you can't have that empathy for it too, right? Like, exactly, so that's a lot of things with like the PTSD, and like something that you will absolutely get, and I can't to the same level as when we came out of the other side of that. Like, we had been entrenched in this world of fighting cancer and doing all of this stuff, and then all of a sudden one day it quit, right? And then we couldn't talk to anybody that could understand our experience, right? And in nicest possible way, I just recently, like I said, I lost my dad, and then 3 weeks ago I lost my wife's stepdad, and it's a different level of loss, because there's some understanding of life lived, right? There's not your entire life that you missed out on, right? You got to at least experience some stuff along the way if we're all lucky, right? And so there's just a different level of understanding, and we're like, I lost a kid, I can't. Somebody that lost their mom is like, dude, I totally understand you, and I appreciate you, Marcus. You're like, I don't understand you, like, I get that, yeah, and I've gotten better at it. At first, I was like, what? Fuck you. You don't understand shit, right? Like, and then I know a lot of people coming back from the military. I can't understand them, but I can start to empathize what they maybe feel with after they come out of theater, right? They've been in Iraq, they've been in Kuwait, they've been wherever they are in this world, fighting wars, shooting at people, getting shot at by people, in the trenches with their brothers. And then they come back to the United States or wherever they come back to, and they have to go work a job where they sit in an office and don't have this hyper focused craziness going on all the time. And so I had a small picture of that, right? And that whole dealing with the PTSD of all of those pieces. And again, we nobody can experience what the other people experience, and so I never want to say that I am, but I kind of got a glimpse into the lack of understanding that the rest of the world sees for every type of person, not just the military people, not just the people coming out of our fights, but all these other people are getting out of their own shit that nobody else can understand on their own box, in their own worlds, and they don't talk about it, right? And they unfortunately, bad things only happen when you don't talk about stuff.
Yeah, it's because we don't ask enough questions, and that's the thing. We learn, we learn job interviews and things that where we ask probing questions. We learn that. So why can't we take that as adults into life? And you ask a probing question, you can know. So if I was to see Marco, hopefully on Saturday, and I was to ask him, "How are you?" and he says, "Yeah, I'm okay," you would know if there's something behind the eyes.
Right.
You would know.
Right.
So rather than just doing the typical thing, okay, cool, and moving on, you ask a probing question like, "Are you sure? Like, what's going on?" And you start to build a bit of not trust. It's more a bit of a backstory, and then you start digging in. Then you start seeing that person open up, and that's what we found on these podcasts. Is a lot of people will start off and sometimes quite reserved,
right?
But then they start understanding, and actually, like Marco and myself, we do care. We do give a shit. We do ask the questions because we care, and we want to know people's stories because we care.
They matter.
People pick up on that, and it's the empathy part. People pick up human nature. You go, oh wow, okay. Somebody wants to listen. They want to listen,
right?
And that's the part. You've got to ask the probing. You've got to ask the probing questions.
I think you have to have somebody like Marco, and I think you guys have to have people like that in your lives, right? Like you guys have each other. I have my buddy Matt, and every Wednesday we try every Wednesday to get on a 1 hour call together and just catch up. How's your work going? How's your work going? Awesome. Now how's life, right? And go through those things. And he's been a friend of mine for 20 years, so he definitely was along with us doing the journey, and he knows all of the pieces, right? So we can have that deeper conversation, but you can't do it like our dads did, right? One of the things, like especially talking about dad stuff, is I had a moment the other day where I realized my dad never went to school to be a dad, and I blamed him for stuff, right? That I'm a son. Dad did things wrong. I couldn't be wrong. It was Dad's fault. And so you grow up and you're like, well, if Dad would have done this, I'd be a better person. Well, screw that, right? Like, did Dad keep me fed? Yeah. Did Dad take me on vacation? Yeah. Did Dad do the best he can to impart the wisdom that he learned from his dad that was barely there? Yeah. Okay. So I'm a dad now, right? And the first thing I saw this early on. I was holding Cole in my arms when he was just a little guy, and he was a little baby, and I literally looked up and said, all I can do is fuck this kid up. Like my goal is to fuck him up as least as I can. And that was literally been my goal my entire life for my son, right? Like our goals for him is be able to do math, be able to read, be able to, learn, and don't be an asshole. Like if you can achieve those things in life, dude, I am the proudest dad in the world, and anything and above that is just gravy, right? So I think that we have to, as guys, have other guys in our world where we can speak those moments to, where we're willing, I'm obviously, like you said, you have to tease out some of this from other people and I just blow up. There's other people that don't, and they need that teasing out, right? They need that conversation to bring those conversations, to ask those deeper questions. And I think in a society that we don't do that as dudes. And I think that we have to.
100%.
And I mean, that's the reason for conflicts and wars, because we can't communicate. We can't simply have a conversation, empathize with the other side, and find a meet in the middle, or at least impart wisdom. You know, one of the other guys that I love to talk to, you know, he's a vegetarian, he's Hindu, he's you know, all these other beliefs and structures of life different from me. And I love that, because every time we talk, he has a completely different view of something, and I have the opposite view of what he has, and we can listen to each other. And okay, so we agree some stuff's wrong, but should I take away some learning every time we have a conversation? And I think that we just have to have more of those conversations, and as a world.
But so many people surround themselves with echo chambers, don't they? Like they just want to hear what they want to hear. They don't. A lot of people don't like being told no. Well, that's not right. That's wrong.
Right.
Think, oh, it's blue. Yeah, it's blue. Yeah, it's blue. Oh, amazing. Yeah. People live in that world where everything. Like I did this test a while back. Well, I've spoke to you about this on the podcast, AD. I remember I went to the pub with a friend a while back, and men are on autopilot, right? We go, hey, right, mate, yeah, I'm all right, yeah, cool. What do you want to drink? Like, so that's the intro, innit, at the pub when you meet guys. Hi, mate, how you doing? You all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're not asking, are you all right? It's just that's what you say, right? So I went to the pub, and one of the lads went, hey, mate, how you doing? You all right? And I went, no, mate, I'm not actually. And he went, oh, what can I get you?
Right. He's like, fuck that, I'm out.
Yeah. And I was like, did you not hear like what I said? Like, there was nothing wrong. I was just testing, like,
exactly.
What the response would be. But yeah, just didn't hear it. Just didn't hear it. Completely shutters. Boom, gone back to the bar.
Or if he did hear it, he knew if he got you a beer, he wouldn't have to deal with it, right?
Yeah, abort.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely.
No, go on. Sorry, you know, I was going to say that, but you know, looking back at me, I was that guy. Like, you know, I've managed. I run my own business now, but I've managed sales teams for the last 15 years, and I've had girls that would be in tears, or even guys would be in tears, and I'd be the kind of guy that when someone's crying, I'm like, "Are you all right?" Like, you know, no. And it's through learning and speaking to people and reading and experiencing stuff myself that I've learned to be empathetic and understand and ask questions and see if people are all right. And ask. So I've learned that, but you have to be willing to learn that. Otherwise, you're just going to you'll sit on your soapbox and carry on as you are.
You know what? It's quite funny, right? So I can remember once, as humans, we always look to somebody to blame. That's always. If something goes wrong, we want to blame somebody straight away. There's no, oh, hang on, what happened? It was your fault, her fault, whatever. And I remember once I got absolutely destroyed. I was in the military. I was talking to my boss, and he said about something had been done wrong. So I used to work in like fast jet operations and things, and was planning this route, and I messed up. Right? I messed up. I was planning some different route, basically my own bloody route. And I remember my boss calling me in, and he sat me down. It was all nicey, and I thought, something's not right here. Like, for starters, you never call me by my first name, so I'm being led into a trap. And then he goes, oh, so what happened with this planning? Who did that? Because what a mess. And he was like, but it's all right. We fixed it. There's nothing going to come of it. And I was like, oh, yeah, cool. I was like, yeah, it was actually, and I looked out the window, and I was like, oh, it was him. And I pointed.
Oh.
So my boss said, hang on, just stand where you are. I was like, right. And I put my hand down. He goes, no, put your hand back up. I was like, right, okay. And he goes, right, so you're pointing at him? I was like, yeah. He goes, but you got 3 fingers pointing back at you.
That's always a good one.
And I went, oh. And he goes, after I got a bit of a bollocking, we call it character building.
Sure.
He said, if you're ever going to point at somebody, don't point. Give it the knife hand, because then every finger's pointing at that person. And I was like, I like that. So even if you are trying to blame somebody, don't point. Just give it the knife. It was all them. Yeah. But it's that reality of we always look for someone else to blame. I knew I'd messed up. I knew that. And I was like, as soon as I seen this sort of nice side of him, and he was like, oh, it's fine. Yeah, we've done it. I was like, oh, yeah, cool. Right. Okay. Well, it was him.
Right.
Actually, in my head, I'm going, you dickhead. No, it wasn't. You get that little devil and angel, don't you? He's going,
Absolutely.
drop him in it. And the other guy's going, you're going to regret it.
It's so true, like blaming. We talked about this the other day, Eddie, but so we did a podcast the other day, and one of the first things the guy said to me, do you remember Steve Young? Eddie, where he was like, "You should have been a footballer. You should have been."
Yeah.
And so I was a good football player as a young kid, and I didn't make it. And now, for the last 10 years, if you'd asked me why I didn't make it, I'd have always said, I got injured, I broke my leg, this just didn't work out, and it was never my fault. And it was me. Like, the truth of the matter is, I didn't work hard enough. I didn't have the right attitude. It was me. But for so long, I just blamed everybody else. It was somebody else's fault. It was never my fault. And that was a story I've ran with for 10 years. Oh, it was because of this, because of that. When actually, it was me.
How happy and content are you? More happy and content when you accept it and you go,
I wasn't good
enough. Move on from that.
Yeah. I wasn't good enough. That's the truth of it.
It's all about acceptance, right? Like, I think that, again, it goes back to all of my stuff where I had to actually proactively get to the point where I had to be okay with all the decisions we made along the way, right? Because in the end, my daughter died, so I failed her. So right, that's the first picture you get, though, right? Like, you're in this moment of like, okay, well, what did I do wrong? How did this result end, right? And the reality is, there's, to my knowledge, in the world, nothing that could have been done, right? There's no single medicine that could have solved the problem in that season of time, right? In the next 5 years, absolutely. Unfortunately, those aren't the years we lived in, and I had to make some really hard calls along the way. And if I had made that call or this call, would things be different? And so that's where I've gotten to the idea of every decision I made the right way was the right decision, and it was never wrong, and I didn't fail it, right? But it's taking acceptance of every decision you've ever made, and I've made a lot of bad decisions, and being okay with those, and again, Viktor Frankl, he talks about a lot of the stuff and what a lot of the people did after they got out of the concentration camps, and the level of, like, all of a sudden they're like, well, screw it, the world sucks, I have no morality, I don't have to adhere to anybody's morality or integrity standards, and they went off the deep end on the craziness, and I could see myself doing that sometimes too, right? Like, the world has wronged me, I'm gonna wrong the world. What do I care? It already took everything it can take from me. Like, what do I have left to give, right? And so I had those moments where I'm like, fuck this world. I'm just gonna ravage it for everything it's worth, and I got my moments where I'm like, I'm gonna go be a millionaire, and I'm just gonna take this world by storm. And I truly think I still could be a millionaire if I wanted to be, but I don't know if I want to put in that amount of effort and miss the years that I get to spend with my kid, because what I've seen now is not being able to spend time with my daughter, or not being able to see my dad after he passed, makes me cherish those moments with my father-in-law that, are maybe I wasn't wanting to hang out with him today, but he's here and my dad's not.
Yeah.
Cole's here and my daughter's not. So I have to spend, in my mind, to keep my sanity, more time with him, and definitely intentional, deep time with him, just to make sure that, because I would have wanted that if my daughter was here.
Yeah.
My son that is. And so it's taking those intentional moments and really taking the time to enjoy them while I can, because there's one thing that all of us are guaranteed: we're going to lose our kids, because they're going to become adults.
Yeah.
And we might not like them, but we like them for the most part right now, right? And so that we can tell them what to do, and we can create their personalities to some degree right now, and we can decide, hey, let's go kart racing. I don't want to go kart racing. I don't care. We're going kart racing. Get in the car. We're going, and we're going to have a blast. And later on, he says, I'm glad you made me do that, Dad. Thank you. And I think that we have to do those things. And so I think it's just very important to be intentional in where we spend our times, and take acceptance for all of those things. And I think that's where I was going with that. But
we have to live for the moment, don't we? We have to. We spoke about it before. Time is one thing we can control what we do with. We can control where we spend our time and how we spend our time. We really can. So that's something you can control. We talk about controllables, and the Segura, and he talks about a lot of the controllables in life. And I read one thing he said was about the nose, and if you don't brush your teeth for a week, like, you can smell it; it's there,
right?
But no one's going to tell you. Like, no one's going to say to you about anything like that. It's your nose is telling you. So it's about listening to yourself, listening to your body. So listening to yourself, you've got time. So spend your time with your son, with your dad, with whoever. but it's about having that quality time over quantity of just being there. Because if you're just sat in a room, you're not really interacting. That's not time well spent. You might never get that back.
It's intentional time. It's intentional time, and it has to be dedicated on purpose time. You have to be focused on them. You can't be just both sitting there on your phone and say, I hung out with my kid today, because you truly didn't. Like, put your devices down, go outside and kick a ball, go outside and throw a ball, go swim, and just talk. You believe that they will talk nonstop. You can't shut them up.
The saddest thing, though, is so many people do just sit there on their phones and tablets and think that's enough. Think that that's them spending time. So especially single, because I'm a single parent. When I have my son, and I haven't quite a lot. So when I have my son, my time is focused on him. Like I'm very rarely near my laptop or my phone. Like that's it. And there'll be times where he's actually sat on his tablet, and I'm poking him. I'm like, come on, let's go do something. Like, hurry up.
That's awesome. And then keep doing that, man.
But you think roles reverse, don't you? Because it should be the other way. It should be the other way around. I've had a tough day at work. I want to sit here and just relax. I can't relax when I've got him, because it's wasted time. I cherish, because I work away quite a lot. So the time I'm back here, I want to be with Dexter all the time. Right. I'm single because of that, because I don't want to devote and dedicate any time to anyone. And again, we have a long life, right? Like, this is the season. And then that's why, like I was saying, like, I could go, like, I read all the books, right? Like, Be Obsessed or Be Average, or, all the things, or even like, what's his name? The freaking Green Beret guy, the Navy SEAL guy, Goggins. David
Goggins. David Goggins. Yeah, you read his book or listened to him. And man, that dude, he shows what's humanly possible. He also shows what you shouldn't do. And in regards to like putting your body through stuff, right? Like, I'm not willing to spend that amount of time to do those things now. But that doesn't mean that I can't do them when he's an adult and gone to college. It doesn't mean that I can't go start my business or write a book or travel around the world without him when he's off raising his own family. You know, and something like that will probably come along. But for right now, he's what's important to me. It's not spending those extra time on the other stuff, right? And I think that's where we sometimes miss in what we're trying to do. And again, we're all gonna lose our kids. I lost my daughter early, and I didn't get to spend a lot of formative years, and it wasn't up to me. I didn't lose my son, but he is gonna grow up. Yeah. And these years are the most special years, the most important years as a parent for raising your kid, but they're also the most special years for us. We only get to be a parent to a little kid for so short. And right now he's 4. So you have these amazing seasons, and you have these very difficult times that you think are so hard. And then you'll get to the next point. And I always said, like, does it ever get like, it's always good. Right. And then the next season he gets a little bit older, and he can do a little bit more stuff, and you get to go do something else that's really cool. Yeah. My son and I, we competitive drone race together. So
I read that in your message. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one of the hobbies that we can go do together. Right. And that's a fun season in life. It's an excuse that I can buy parts for myself. Hey, babe, me and the son are going to go race this weekend. Got to buy new parts. It doesn't work as well when you're like, hey, I'm going to go race and you and the kid can do something. But it's a great excuse, by the way. Use it when you need to. But it's just a fun time that you have to make sure you spend the time in. And that's one of the things that I've also gleaned. Again, you have to find the things in the shit that apply to the life that you still live.
It's bigger picture. Bigger picture. It's hard to see that at times. It's very hard to see bigger picture. I think everyone's been through something where you think, there's no light at the end of this. You think, this is it. But through the experience and through lessons learned and a life lived, you go, hang on, bigger picture here. Like, what's important? Like,
but as humans, it's hard, right? Our brains aren't wired for that. Our brains are wired to exist, right? Like Maslow's law, all the things to continue to exist. Do I have shelter? Am I fed? And now what's the now, right? Yeah. Like, is it what's the driver? Sex or food? Or like, that's the human lizard brain part of us that's like in tune to all of those things. And then to try to like use the evolved brain and grasp that bigger picture of the world. Again, I think that's what our world struggles with. It's why we have wars. It's why we have all these conflicts, is that because we just can't see that bigger picture. But we have to have what that finite stuff is for us, right? And that has to be what's important to us. And then we have to find whatever our truths are. And I think that, and Michon, who leads Mind Valley, wrote the book, The Code for the Extraordinary Minds. And he really talks about breaking down all the beliefs that we have in understandings of why we believe what we believe, right? So I've written my own truths. I believe in certain things because I believe in them. Not because I was born in the United States, which is 90% or whatever percentage, probably less than that now, but whatever percentage Christian. I became a Christian because my mom was Catholic, because my mom was a Catholic, and I was told to be a Catholic, and I was told to believe in Jesus. Well, if I was born in Saudi Arabia, that wouldn't have been the case, most likely. I mean, there's small exceptions, but most likely not, right? And so why do I believe what I believe? Is it because that's what it is, or is that what I truly believe? If people he talks about not being able to eat meat because Hindus don't eat meat. Well, why, Mom? Well, all kinds of reasons. Well, I want to eat meat. So understanding what those truths are to me, and then as humans, we put cause to chaos, right? Another book, Thinking Fast and Slow, is we have to have a cause to the chaos. We have to have a reason for the thing, right? We had to have been developed from some mightier being. And I'm not saying anything's wrong, and I'm not saying I know any of these pieces. I'm just saying that there's a larger understanding that we have to understand about why we believe what we believe as an individual, right? And I think that there's huge benefits to churches. I think there's huge benefits to religions. I think that there's been a ton of good, there's been a ton of bad when you look at those things. But really, what does it boil down for me? Am I a vegetarian because I don't want to eat meat? I eat meat, by the way. I raise my own. I have sheep. But am I that because of that, or am I that because I want to tell everybody I'm a vegetarian, right? Those types of things. So what are my own truths? What do I believe? Again, going back to the root of, if it doesn't hurt me and it doesn't hurt anybody else, awesome. And it's the same for everybody else. Believe what you want to believe, but live how you want to live. Just live with kindness and empathy. And this world can be such a better place.
Is that so hard?
It's not hard at all.
It's not so hard. We did a podcast the other day, and we were talking about. So we do these sort of chats, a little bit more serious. And normally once a week we do just a chat about what's going on in the world, local. Right. And every week we seem to be talking about a war in the Middle East, a war in Asia, a war somewhere. We're talking about conflict all over the place, and we were just like, can people just not be happy with what they've got and just get on with life?
All of those wars, or all of those people that have been told to believe what they believe, that are standing so hard and flexible on that and won't listen. And so there's this level of empathy that doesn't exist, right? So that everybody can understand everybody else's strife, so that we can get along together, right? That's the missing piece, man. And it's you're right. It's not hard. It really isn't. And I think the more we can open our eyes to that, the better we can all be.
It takes more energy to hate than it does to love. It consumes you.
There's American.
It takes an effort to love. It's easy. It's easy to hate.
Yeah, there's an American comedian. I forget who he was, but he was like, why? It's like, why? He's talking about going to sign up to go and fight in the Middle East, and he's like, what? Why? He's like, why do I hate these people just because they dropped out of their mother's fanny in the Middle East? If they'd have dropped out in America, it would be fine.
Right. Absolutely. It's all those truths, right? So going through that book is really interesting. He actually gives you a warning in the beginning. He's like, just so you know, if you read this book, you might not believe the same things you believe in the end. You might not have the same relationship you have in the end.
Which book's this?
The Code for the Extraordinary Minds.
I've got since doing this, I've got a list of books that I'm going to do. That's amazing.
So I've been dying to ask for I was looking for the right moment to ask this. What's your favorite book?
I think the one I'm reading at the moment, and
it's always the one you're reading at the moment, by the way.
I'm just get comfy for this.
Adriel hates this because I always talk about this book at the moment, and it's this The Science of Positive Self-Talk.
I like that.
And it's so good. It's about, how you have these internal voices in your head. When you do something stupid, you're like, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Stupid. You're so stupid. It's about listening to that internal voice. And if you listen to those negative thoughts, it will allow you to drag yourself down and down and down. And it's about pinpointing the positive thoughts and the negative thoughts and taking those positive. If you say it in your head, it will happen.
If you continue to say something long enough, it's going to become your own truth, right? So the lies we tell ourselves about the bad stuff, it's going to become the bad stuff. That's a large component of that ego piece, though, right? It's all ego.
Well, I talk about it in in sports. I think so. I now play a very low level of amateur football, and
Awesome.
like it's actually vets. So like I'm 36 now. So we qualify for the vets teams. They are over 35, basically.
That's a good day, right? You're like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm playing with them now. Got it. And then you got to relook at it and be like, I'm the youngest one on the team.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? Like, I hadn't played in a long time, and I started the first season. I struggled, like, and I was like, oh, I haven't done that right, or that bottom touch is wrong. And I was listening before I read this book. This was, and I was listening to all those on the pitch. And if you start listening to negativity in your head once you're playing sports, it just carries on. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that you just keep reliving. And then I started reading this book, and I went into the second season, and I would just go on the pitch and I tell myself, I'm the best player on this pitch. I'm the best. It's not like I'm sat there thinking it, but I'm like, yeah, oh. Oh, you got bored.
He's the best player. Nah.
Yeah.
Nah. Self-proclaimed. Look at him.
There he is.
Oh, my God. Dude, you were
great timing. Great timing.
Listening.
Yeah. But no. So I was just saying that. I go on telling myself, I'm good. That's good, and I'm just blocking out all that negativity. And the season that I've just had was it's like 200% better than the season before.
Absolutely.
And the only thing that's changed is the way I think about performing. And I'm just through reading that book and listening to the positivity and the positive thoughts, it works. So I went on a course once. So way back in the day, I used to work in hospitality, and this guy was like this trainer. He said, even if you're having a bad day, when you go over to the table, as you're walking up to the table, say in your head over and over again, I really like you. I really like you. And then when you get to the table, you'll be smiling and you'll be happy. And the way you interact with these people will be so much better than without saying that. It so works. It really does.
Well, it kicks off all those neurochemicals too, right? Like you're getting all the dopamines and you're getting all these other things that excite you and make you in the right direction. And then there's the whole aspect of, how ego is there to protect us, right? If you think about our primal brains and our evolved, then to the evolved brain, but you go back to the primal days of like us trying to not get killed by a lion as we walk through the forest, like those primal days, like we were designed to like protect ourselves. So ego talks us down in a way to keep us from going out on the limb in a way that doesn't preserve us anyways, right? So like by us having that, we have to overcome that with the evolved brain and be like, you know what? No. I'm going to say all these positive things to myself. I'm going to put myself in this space. And then that's when you get all those kicks of those neurochemicals behind you that get you into that state and they give you that other experience, which is awesome, right? So all those pieces go together. And just, positive self-talk is awesome. So that's a good one. What about you, Addy? What's your favorite book, man?
So my favorite book is I actually keep it. This isn't prepared. So anyone listening, this isn't prepared.
I dig it.
So I actually keep it in here. So I don't know if you've ever read that one, Marco.
No, I was just saying
the same line though.
Yeah,
sorry.
I was wondering if you were going to pick up the thingy of Avalon book that you've got on your desk.
No, this one.
Yeah,
there's that one. And
Zero Negativity.
Yeah, and he's done a couple of books, and this one it's so good. He talks about he's like an alpha male. He's ex-SAS and he's been through so much shit. But the way he breaks it down, and it does make you think about stuff, about about having zero negativity about any situation. Like if you're in a bad situation, there is something to come out of that, whether it's good for you or good for the situation or that person. There is something good to come out of every situation.
Right. I mean, that's what we talked about today, right?
Yeah, and if anything, it's a learning. There's nothing there. Nothing in life is actually there to break you. It tests you, 100% tests you, but you become strong. You learn from it, and you start thinking. You change your way of thinking, and that's exactly what this book has done. And I keep it there.
Well, you're the sum of all your parts, right?
Yeah.
So whatever's happened to you in the past makes you who you are today. Like I always say, no regrets. Like, I have no regrets of anything that I've done in my life. And I've said this before. Like, I've done some stupid shit. I really, really have.
We all have.
Yeah.
We're dudes.
But I regret it? No, because it's made me the person that I am today. I've lived through those experiences. I've done some things that you go, yeah, I can't do that again. Like, I'll never do that again. And I'll make sure that whoever's around me will never do that again. Yeah. So I'm, today a better person for doing that stupid thing. So yeah, no regrets. No regrets.
I'm the king of stupid. So absolutely. I've definitely become a much better person for that, without a doubt. I think it's funny that you guys are both reading, like, your favorite books were about positivity, right? His was zero negative, so no negative, and yours was all positivity, which is a different way of saying the same thing, right? And so all the stuff that we can learn from those pieces is super important. And yeah, books are amazing, man. I think Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning is probably the number one book for me, because
I just got that on audio.
It's a really old book, right? But yet it's so true. Like, we don't really change as humans. Like I said before, we all think we're unique, but we're not. And I think that understanding those fundamental pieces of, for me, like, I just had to know, why do I feel what I feel, right? And like, why is this loss so huge? And part of it, we have to have a reason, right? It goes back to that, you have to have a cause to the chaos, something to where, like, people will be like, oh, all things happen for a reason. Oh, so my daughter died for a reason? Oh, well, not all things have to happen for a reason then, right? Okay, let's just agree on that one. And so, like, there's cause, people put causality to chaos. And so, there's all those pieces you put together. But I got lost. But Viktor Frankl really, like, helped me get through a lot of those things. And then I understood really, like, why do I feel what I feel? And, like, the preservation of life at a raw, lower primal level is what I think all parents want, right? Like, the biggest, scariest thing in the world is for your kid to get sick, or in that moment where, Addie, you jumped in and you're like, you will not hurt my kid. You're doctor. You will be nice, right? Like, that's just it's an instinctual, raw nature on the lizard side of the brain. That's like, fight or flight. I'm going to go fight right now. And I needed to understand, like, why did that hurt so much, right? Like, losing my dad hurt, and I loved him and I miss him, but it didn't hurt like losing my daughter at all, right? And part of that was because I had just gone through so much loss. Like, I was so scarred to it, right? Scar tissue was so hard to get through when they operate on you again for that reason, right? But, like, my emotional cocoon is very scarred, right? Like, I don't have the same feelings that other people have, right? Like, they're all blown up and I'm like, what's your problem? But I try to empathize with them. So I've that's actually within the last 6 months. Prior to that, I was just like, I don't understand why you guys are all wimps. But now I actually try to empathize with them, and I get it a little bit better. But I think that, just understanding, like, why we feel those feelings is key to me. And I think, like, all the stuff you guys are reading, why positivity works. Well, why does it really work? And I want to understand more and more and more of that stuff. Like, why when you go on vacation is it the best moment ever? Hedonic adaptation, right? And, like, breaking the hedonic cycle of doing the same thing over and over and over again. And you go on vacation and, oh my God, it was amazing. And you come back to work and you're like, my life's still sad. Well, if you do things to break the hedonic cycle every single day, all of a sudden your life doesn't suck so bad anymore, right? Like, you add football, or you add, going for a walk with your son that you haven't been doing. And then all of a sudden life feels amazing. They talked about, like, someone eating popcorn regularly. These kids are like, it's just popcorn, but they gave them chopsticks. And, like, a huge percentage of them just ate it all up because they were excited just because they added chopsticks to it, right? So they changed the hedonic cycle. And so just by understanding more and more of those pieces, it makes me appreciate my life more. It helps me try to lead my son better. It tries to help me lead my family better. And it just tries to make me be a better person and appreciate the world, and not just, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm a American, I'm a European. Like, we're all just people on this earth together, and we just happen to be alive at the same time. And if we could just harness the love that's between all of those people that are born today and die today, right? And that's really the scale of our existence. There was somebody born today, and a lot of people born today, and a lot of people that died today, and somewhere in between we get to live today. And it's how we live that day, and it's how we live that day together where we can, but also celebrating our uniqueness and pulling everybody together in our unity. And I just, the more I read, the more I understand the brain, the more I just, that message just keeps ringing.
What a beautiful way to end it. A beautiful note to end it on.
Thank you, guys.
I listen, really enjoyed that. We normally do this for an hour, and we've gone on for two.
We've been a bit long today, didn't we?
Yeah, no, that's testament to the conversation, I think.
You get a sales guy on the phone, you can't make him stop.
I just need to go and check my account, see what I brought.
But yeah, look, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us. I'm definitely going to read your blog. It reminded me of the Fatherhood movie. Have you seen the Fatherhood movie?
I don't think I have.
No, so that's Matthew Loughlin, I think the guy's called, and so it's a what's his name, the actor Kevin Hart. So Kevin Hart plays it, but it's Matthew Loughlin. Yeah, but it's a really good film, but it's about a guy who starts a blog when his wife was going through. I can't remember what she was going through, but she dies literally days after giving birth, and he becomes the father. So he blogged through all that illness and stuff. So it reminded me of it reminded me of that. So I'm definitely going to give that a read.
It's a hard read, man.
No, I imagine.
Someday I got to figure out a way to make it into a book. I'm not, like I said, I'm not a writer. I want to combine the story and I want to combine the takeaways, into some messages that I hope will resonate. And, again, why you started the blog and why everyone starts one is hopefully it'll help one person. And if it helps more, awesome.
Yeah. No, incredible. And again, echo what Marcus said. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And you've definitely inspired some thinking in myself.
Thank you
for how I'm currently living life and what I'm doing and the things that I'm sort of holding on to, which I probably shouldn't hold on to. And so really appreciate that. And thank you for your time, all 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, and thanks for doing what you guys do, right? To maybe my conversation gets one person thinking, or just you guys thinking, right? And that in itself is worth it. I'll have this conversation 1,000 times over if the people that talk to me get something out of it, and maybe some that listen did too. But what you guys do is you continually doing this, right? You guys are showing up, you're putting in the work, you're doing the editing, you're doing all of the stuff that's behind the scenes. And, you mentioned how long it's going to take to get the podcast out there. And I know that's not easy. And I appreciate everything that you guys do in regards to that on just a weekly basis and just staying true to that. And I think you guys have a great message and you guys have great guests. I've watched a number of them to make sure I wanted to be on before I came on. And they've all gone really well. And so just keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
No, appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Ira.